Hello, and welcome to the What the Act podcast. I am your host, Sabreena Guman. This is the bi-weekly podcast where we talk about all things acting. Who would have thought? I hope everyone is staying safe, staying home, social distancing. Some crazy times we're living in. Coronavirus. It's pretty clear that most of us are staying home and watching Netflix or some other subscription site that we have. It seems like whenever you're catching up with somebody on the phone, you're always giving each other new suggestions for new movies or TV shows. And it got me thinking, what do we watch as actors? What do we watch that inspires us to do what we do and what makes us fall in love with our craft? So I went to a few of my friends and I said, hey, what were the things that led up to you becoming who you are as an actor? First up, we have Maddy Watson. Maddy is one of the most comedic people I know. She also happens to be one of the kindest people I know. So let's see what she has for us.
As a kid, I was never really into musicals, and we watched really, comedies and and sports. That was my childhood, and musicals never really fell into those categories. But then I got older and I grew to have a real appreciation for the talent required for musical theater. And I think the most influential performance that I've seen was Notre Dame de Paris in London. And until that point, I don't think I truly understood how powerful movement and body language could be in a production. Up until that point, I relied, as an actor and as a writer on the script and what was written. Then I went to see this musical, and the musical was entirely in French. I understood every interaction, and just the raw emotion combined with these incredibly athletic movements. I think that was a real lesson that I've taken with me into my own productions, that the script is important, but it's really not everything. I grew up in a really just naturally funny family, so I've always kind of gravitated to things that make me and my siblings laugh, because it's really just what we were exposed to. A huge part of who I am as an actor and a writer and even just a person is my sense of humor. I'm a very comedy person, so majority of my inspirations are comedians or comedic actors. I think some of my favorite actors right now are Ryan Reynolds, Zach Galifianakis, Jason Segel, Russell Brand. I think they all have just the ability to laugh at themselves, if that makes sense, and a lot of them use sarcasm as kind of a form of just natural comedy. When you have just naturally funny people who understand their character and understand humor and comedic timing and all of those important things, it's just ideal. Personally, I find nothing funnier than real life, and I think a great example of this whole idea is The Office, one of my favorite shows. When you look at the plot itself, just plot alone, it is a bunch of middle-aged people working in an office with an incompetent boss. The show doesn't really seem like it should be as successful as it was. The show can attribute its crazy success totally to just well-developed characters and actors who understood who their character was, and that character-based philosophy has totally shaped how I write.
Maddy is very much a sarcastic person. She's like a young teen female Ryan Reynolds. There's probably a joke in there somewhere, but it's quarantine. I'm not exactly at my usual funny self. What do you want me to do? Looking back at her performances, I can definitely see all the influences she's had. Like I said before, she's very much like Ryan Reynolds. And they're both Canadian. Oh my god. Connection. Wow. Good stuff, Maddy. Thank you. Next, we have Miss Makayla Maxwell. Makayla is one of those people who is extremely passionate about everything she does. It's really hard not to be inspired when you're around her. Not to mention, she is hilarious as well. Let's take a listen.
When it comes to some of my favorite all-time celebrities, the first person who comes to mind is Eddie Murphy. He starred in some of my favorite movies growing up, like Dreamgirls, Coming to America, The Nutty Professor, Harlem Nights. And when I was 11 years old, I found out he was not only in them, but he wrote some of them. That inspired me so much because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. And Eddie Murphy and James Baldwin are the reasons I decided to start writing. I grew up in a family that is really into cinema, but there's so many other films that I grew up that were so influential and important to me that it's really hard to focus on one or two. But the first film that always comes to mind is The Wiz. I think it was the first film I ever watched, so it really means a lot to me. And the film is what introduced me to Michael Jackson, who's very influential to me. And if I'm being honest, I'm pretty sure I can still quote most of that film. There's so many videos of me at 4 years old belting the finale song as hard as I could to really drive home the fact that I was obsessed with that movie. Another movie I grew up with was Dreamgirls. I think this was the film that jump-started my love for musicals and my love for Beyonce. I used to make my little brother put on a dress so that we could reenact scenes from the film and all the musical numbers, and I really thought I was hitting all those notes, and I am telling you. I love movies so much that I wasn't content just watching them, and the characters would continue to live on in my head, so I started writing a book I remember titling What Happens Next, and I wrote about what I think is going on with the characters after the ends of films. And my love of films really turned into my love of writing. I also think that books were very influential to me growing up. I was obsessed with Harry Potter. When I say obsessed, I mean obsessed. I was sure that I was a witch born into a Muggle family and that I'd get my Hogwarts acceptance letter when I turned 11. But no series or author influenced me the way James Baldwin has. The first book of his I've ever read was If Beale Street Could Talk, and I was in love with the way that he wrote. He was the first grown-up author that I read. Before that, I only read novels aimed towards preteens, so to jump from stories about mystical worlds and magic to systemic racism and bigotry was a shocking turn, but a welcome one. I'm sure I've read every single essay he's written and almost every book, and I know so many facts about him it's almost creepy. The way that Baldwin's words made me feel will forever resonate with me, even if I can't remember exactly what they were. I've read Giovanni's Room about 4 times now, and I always get choked up towards the end. It's Baldwin who encouraged me to write my own stories, and he's the reason I wanted to be an author when I was 14.
It's really cool to see Makayla as an actor and as a writer. It's evident in her writing that she takes these aspects of her life and really applies them to her work. Thank you so much, Makayla, for sharing this with us. Growing up, I wasn't the only actor in the family. In fact, I got all of my interest in acting from my dad. I remember seeing him rehearsing and performing a couple times. He was in a few films as well. I was actually in a film with him when I was a kid. It was called Never Too Late. It's on YouTube. Go check it out. Don't make fun of me, though. I remember seeing people like Jim Carrey and Tom Hardy and Al Pacino and Heath Ledger and going, wow. There was something about their acting that really intrigued me, and it was so real and it felt so raw. It wasn't until later on that I learned that the way that they acted actually had a name. It was method acting. So I decided to look more into this method acting, and I discovered that it was really difficult, but also really intriguing. But once I started to understand it more, I realized that it was this perfect balance of naturalism and realism. At first, it proved to be difficult because you had to pull from your own experiences as well as others. And I wasn't exactly doing that fully because I was kind of scared, really. I've been known to play some pretty dark characters, and I found the best way is to tap into my struggle with depression and anxiety. It took me a while to gain the courage and the strength to really pull from my own experiences, but once I did, I found that my performances were at least 60 times better. But it also came at a cost. I found that once I was done with the performance, it was really hard to come out of that state of mind, and often left me in a position where I was barely able to function. Yet I still do it. I often wonder why I do it, but then I realized it was my commitment to my craft. It was something that I was willing to put myself through because I wanted to give the best possible performance that I could give. I think what interested me most about acting was that you could be someone else for a while. Not only that, but it was your job as an actor to think about what events might have happened in their past, what led up to whatever is starting this film. You know, like whenever you read a script, it shouldn't be the start of a character. So now there was this whole responsibility of really creating a new human being and really manifesting them into yourself. If that's not the coolest thing you've heard of, I don't know what is, really. You could go up to any actor and really ask them this entire question, and it could take them hours and hours to respond. But unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the What the Act podcast. Once again, I am your host, Sabreena Guman. A special thank you goes out to Maddy and Makayla for sending in those inspirational videos for us. I'd also like to thank Athena Henna for creating the cover art for this podcast. You can check her out at Athena Henna on Instagram. That does it for this week. Stay safe, everyone. See you next time.